December 1998 was when Manny Pacquiao first became a world champion. He picked up the WBC strap at flyweight, and that was around the time that I first started to become a hardcore fan of this sport. We were about to get Sky Digital, me and my family, over here in the UK for Lennox Lewis against Evander Holyfield 1. I remember that very well, and I have been a hardcore fan since. I've written a book as well. And since then, Manny Pacquiao has just done unbelievable things. And for me, the noughties, that was where the real action and legacy was in all of boxing. That's where the real last golden era was. Barrera, Pacquiao, Morales, Marquez. They just overlapped in the most incredible way. All legacy fights, and it's so hard to find a bad fight there. They range between good and incredible. And they're just fights I'll never forget. I watched so many of them live. The styles contrast, the passion. It was all there. Well, Manny Pacquiao is still fighting. This is an inactive guy who is going to be 43 later this year, at the end of the year. And he is going up against Errol Spence. I have just heard that Freddie Roach actually wanted him to fight Mikey Garcia. It would have been a bit boring that though, wouldn't it? With the amount of time that Pacquiao has had off, and I think has he not been stripped of his WBA title that he won off Thurman because of inactivity? I think so. He was always going to need a big fight to end this. If this is going to be the last fight of his career, win or lose, it needed to be big. And Errol Spence is that guy. He looked very good against Danny Garcia. He had that ridiculous crash where it seemed like he was so lucky to survive, and yet he didn't seem to have too much wrong with him, beating 7 bells out of Danny Garcia. Very commanding performance over 12 rounds, where we saw the same work rate, the same physical presence that Spencer's always had, backing you up behind a southpaw jab, just going to work, never overloading with any shot, but to the body, to the head, always in control, very solid. And always in fantastic shape. He's huge as a welterweight. What Pacquiao is going to try and attempt is very rare. If he wins, his standing, whatever it may be, whatever your opinion is, it has to go up in the all-time rankings. I don't necessarily mean, for my opinion, that makes him number 1. Maybe top 10. For me, the likes of Ray Robinson, Harry Greb, and Sam Langford, they are hard to top. That's another video. But just the fact that Pacquiao is taking this fight against a much bigger man in his prime, and he's 42 going on 43, that says so much. That says so much about his spirit as a fighter. That goes back to the kind of performance he put against Barrera back in 2003 when he just ripped him up. He is a tiger of a man. What he's going to attempt has been done before. Guys in their 40s, the likes of Bob Fitzsimmons against George Gardner, was that 1903 or so, outpointed him. Got the light heavyweight championship. Archie Moore had many of his significant victories in his 40s. Bernard Hopkins, great victories over Antonio Tarver and Kelly Pavlik as a man in his 40s. What those guys had there in those great moments in their career, they had the discouraging power aspect. They were able to make their opponents second guess because they had enough pop. It is absolutely imperative that Pacquiao is able to hurt Spence. A guy who was so much physically bigger, who is known for his stamina, who is going to make the old man work. And I think the odds are going to say when this fight gets a little bit longer in the tooth, that's where Pacquiao might fall apart now. And so it is essential that Pacquiao, with that quick left hand, he's still got the angles. Watch him in training, he's still quick. But he has to be able to call upon enough of that in a fight, not sparring, where he hurts Spence and makes him think and makes him slow down. He needs to slow down the pace with that awkwardness and those lightning lefts. and make it into a bit of an older man waltz. We can't expect him to go to work on him like he did against Margarito back in the day, where he's lighting you up with... I watched that live, just incredible combinations, just like a waterfall. He can't do that anymore. He has to conserve his energy, ping him with the right shots, and it has to have an effect. If Spence doesn't really care for his left hand, his wasp-like attacks, he'll just work him over quickly. Power was the key factor in some of those milestone victories I just mentioned. Fitzsimmons, Gardner, Hopkins, Pavlik. You have to be able to hurt the guy. When you don't have stamina anymore, when the reflexes aren't as good, when you can't rely on volume, and it's Spence now who probably overtakes Pacquiao in terms of work rate. When it gets to rounds 9 to 12, and if it's still quite close, that's when we should expect Spence then, the bigger and younger man, to take over. If there's going to be a route for Pacquiao to win, he will have had to swelled up, cut, hurt Spence to the point he's a little bit in his cage. He's a little bit, I don't want to commit anymore. But the fact I can just almost slightly see those routes to victory is what makes this so compelling. It's great that he's not fighting Mikey Garcia. Forget that. It's just not in the spirit with Manny Pacquiao's career. A guy who's gone up so many weights. Like the fights against De La Hoya, and yeah, retrospectively we had the intravenous, trying to re-strengthen and all that. We know that. But going into those fights, going into the fight against Cotto, against Margarito, these weren't just questions of like, these look, a bit dangerous. It was like, Pacquiao's health is at risk here. And it was. He got his ribs broken against Margarito. That fight changed him. I think that was when we saw the end of Pacquiao's prime. You see him get doubled over briefly in round 6 when Margarito, such a much bigger man, boom, goes to Pacquiao with that left hook and he doubles over. And I didn't notice it at the time watching it live because he's just so full of energy. But his body has gone through so much. I always say the one most incredible thing perhaps about Manny Pacquiao is for a guy to have started at flyweight and put his body through so much competition and he's still at world level. It's like he's not made of the same stuff. But it's a great fight. It's perhaps the most, you could say, emotive fight of the year, because this probably will be the end of Manny Pacquiao's career, win or lose. And I think even if he were to win, it's going to take a lot out of him. It's going to take what's left of him. Fantastic fight, though. Again, it's not so much about if he wins and what it means historically. It's more about just the fact he is taking this kind of fight at this stage of his career. It says a lot. It sends the message. Tells everyone else in boxing, sort it out.